everyone, how is it going? Welcome to my little sewing studio here. In today's episode, we're going to make this fun alphabet theme Dr. Seuss baby quilt. The dimension of this quilt is 37 inches wide and 48.5 inches long. So I use a fabric panel at the center of this quilt here. I've got the fabric from the Amazon, so when you order it, you're gonna order per panel. So unlike when you buy normal fabric which they cut by the yard. So at the top and the bottom border here, I added some numbers appliques, so it's from 1 to 10. Then at the side border here, I just added some scraps of leftover nursery theme fabric. At the back here, this fun backing fabric with vehicle theme. This is a fun quilt that you can sew for your child or grandbaby, especially if you have a toddler or preschooler. You know how they learn from pretty much everything that you expose to them. So we're gonna get started soon. I hope you enjoy this tutorial, and as usual, let me know in the comment below if you have any question or feedback. Consider subscribing. I post weekly fun sewing and quilting projects. So without further ado, let's get started. Prepare your fabric panel. You do not need to pre-wash this fabric since we're not making a garment. Simply iron this and smoothen up all the wrinkles and you are good to go. Next, you want to straighten up all the edges here by trimming them off. You want to leave about 1/4 inch of seam allowance on all 4 sides. So what I do, I simply line up my ruler 1/4 inch away from the actual block and then cut. So you're gonna end up with something like this, and your panel should now measuring 41.5 by 23 inch including the seam allowance. For the border, you're gonna need about 1/2 yard of fabric in white or off-white color. So you wanna fold this in half first from one selvage end to another, and then fold that again in half and cut 4 strips measuring 4 inches wide. So I'm gonna start off by straightening up the edges here and then start cutting 4 inches strips out of this. Out of these strips, you're gonna need to cut 2 30-inch long strips for the top and the bottom border and 2 41.5 inch strips for the side borders. Now we're going to prepare the side panel. What you're gonna do is to cut 2.5 inch strips from various fabrics. You can use leftover fabric that you've had from previous projects, or use whatever scraps that you have on hand. Basically, we're going to make 48 pieces of 4 by 2.5 inch rectangles. And once you've got like 3 or 4 strips, you can go ahead and stack them up, and then you want to cut 4 inch rectangles out of this. I use 4 different fabrics for this, so I cut 12 pieces from each fabric. Once you've cut all of your fabrics, go ahead and lay them out just like shown here. So here's the top and the bottom border, and this is the side border. And you want to arrange your rectangular strips just like so, dividing 24 pieces on each side. Now we're going to work on piecing these side panels first. So go ahead and sew these rectangle pieces together with 1/4 inch of seam allowance. If your fabric has directional print just like mine, you may want to be careful when piecing these to make sure they're all pieced in the same direction. Then you want to go ahead and press these towards either direction, doesn't matter. Once you've done that, you want to go ahead and sew the other panel. Now we're going to make the applique for the numbers. So go ahead and print the numeric 0 to 9. The size of each number should be about 2 by 3 inches. And you want to make sure to flip each number at 180 degrees, except of the 0 here since it is horizontally symmetrical. Then you want to take your fusible adhesive. Mine is from the Heat and Bond. So you just want to unroll it and lay that on top of your paper, the glue side down. Then you want to trace these letters on your Heat and Bond paper, just like so. I'm using a Sharpie here, but you can use pen or pencil, doesn't really matter. And go ahead and cut whatever excess. Now prepare the fabric for your applique, and you want to lay that wrong side up. Take the fusible adhesive and lay that glue side down. Then you want to fuse this with an iron on cotton setting. So you may want to use your pressing cloth for this job, and you may also position this the other way around, so have your fusible adhesive rather underneath and the fabric on top. It doesn't really matter. But you don't want to do what I did here. If you notice that I've got some extra fusible adhesive here sticking out from my fabric. Now it rather stuck on the pressing board. Once you've done fusing this, you want to go ahead and cut all these numbers. Use your applique scissor or craft scissor if you have one. It's a lot easier for this job. Lay the number 1 through 5 on top of your top border. I spaced them about 4 inches apart. Then you want to peel the backing off. Then go ahead and fuse these with an iron. And once you've done that, go ahead and sew these appliques in place. I sew this with simple straight stitches, but you can also use like zigzag stitches or applique stitches if your machine got that feature. And you don't have to stress out too much to get the stitching to be perfectly in place. Mine is a little wonky in some places, but I kind of like it. It's sort of giving nice effect to these appliques. And here is how mine turned out. Now we're ready to actually start piecing this quilt top. So you're gonna start from the side border first. Sew this with 1/4 inch of seam allowance. Press the seams towards the fabric panel. Now go ahead and sew the other side border. Now that we've done piecing our quilt top, it's time to sandwich and baste this. So you will need about 1.5 yards of fabric for the backing for this quilt. Lay this wrong side up. Then take your quilt batting. I'm using cotton batting because I want this quilt to be breathable, especially since my son is pretty sensitive to heat. And here I've got my quilt top on top of the batting. I use spray basting to do this, but obviously you can use pin basting as well, whatever method that you actually comfortable with. Once you've got your quilt basted and ready to go, it's time to go ahead and quilt this. For this quilt, I'm going to use my walking foot and make simple wavy lines horizontally. They're about 1.5 inches apart. I started off from the center and then make my way to the sides. Obviously, you can do any kind of quilting design that you like. If you are more advanced in your machine quilting skill and prefer more complex design, go for it. So just have fun with this. And once you've done quilting, go ahead and bind your quilt. If you're going to make your own binding strips, you're gonna need to cut 5 binding strips. I usually use 2.5 inch wide binding. And I'm binding this quilt using decorative stitches, which is actually my favorite method. I posted different tutorial for this, so if you want to have a look on that, I'll link that down below on the description box. And that's all I have for you today, guys. Thumbs up if you like this tutorial, and I shall see you next time with another fun sewing project. Goodbye!